stuff to review. He usually puts something.
That's there for you to read.
Yeah.
What's that? Oh, not this time.
We missed that.
Nothing out of China in the last 2 months.
They're more worried about their economy than they are about rain.
Evaluation.
Do you think you're gonna need this one?
It's a mighty.
Cause it's got one of those programs Anthony put on there. I'm gonna have to kill it, I think.
Fires
Yeah?
in 2011, and it just burned hundreds of thousands.
I'll try it first. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, I'll shut
If
it
you have
down.
not seen that.
Yeah. We were there as it was raining, and everything was green and blue. It was unbelievable. I've been to lots of national parks, but I tell you what, you don't need to go to a national park. It's really beauty out there. Drive around Fort Salem. There's Frank. Hot dog, I thought I was gonna have to take a charge. Welcome to Austin traffic, one more time.
Good morning, sir. I'm well. How are you doing? Chairman's fine.
Hey, Gary.
Frank is even better.
Gary, they opened a Bass Pro Shop up in Round Rock.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Cabela's the same.
Everything well?
Really?
Yeah.
Which is real busy. And Round Rock is.
Round Rock's
Give me
north.
anything to
Yeah.
work on.
We got 7 from Department of Health Services.
It's a heck of a store.
It is, it's,
I wouldn't say it puts Cabela's to shame, but it certainly does tax them.
yeah.
That was good. And you did 15 years? Did I see that?
About 16 years.
16. Yeah. Lunch. See you, Bill. Thanks. George? No, it's Frank. Harry? Yeah. Good to meet you, George.
What happened to you, Frank?
They appointed me as a judge at radio shows.
Oh, well, congratulations.
Yeah, it's a very part-time.
What'd they do?
Municipal judge in radio shows. You all ready now that y'all been waiting on me?
We haven't been waiting, we've been talking about the good weather.
Have him throw the book at
All right. Well, good morning. It is August 20th, 2015, a little bit after 10 o'clock in the morning. We'll call the regular meeting of the Texas Weather Modification Advisory Committee to order, and I will call roll. Frank Riley, presiding officer, present. Don Parrish. Gary Foster.
Here.
James Nance.
Here.
Alan Zeman.
Here.
All right. So certified we have a quorum present to conduct business. And our first order of item after that is the approval of minutes from April 30th. Anybody have any questions or changes, modifications?
I'll move we approve the minutes.
Second.
Got a motion in 2 seconds. Pat was the official seconder. All right. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor of approving the minutes, please raise a hand.
Yeah.
All right. The ayes and the hands have it. That brings us to our next item, which is public comment. Got a couple of comment cards from folks here, and all are welcome to come up and visit with us about anything you might have to. I guess I just have one, but might have to say we can't answer any questions or anything unless it's on the agenda, but we certainly will take your comment, and if it's something that merits further discussion, we'll put it on a future agenda. So, got Christina Green Martinez. Would like to come up and have a seat. And welcome.
Thank you. Good morning.
I did. And ma'am, we're broadcasting, so you're going to be a movie star today.
Making me nervous.
And the meeting will be archived, so if you would make sure that the microphone's close enough so people on the internet can hear you.
Okay. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes,
Clearly?
ma'am.
Okay. I prepared this statement because I know there's a limited amount of time. I've been researching weather modification for the past several months, and not surprising, hardly anyone that I've spoken to is aware that such programs exist. What concerns me most is that in spite of these programs that are designed to protect the environment and the public, we are witnessing record-breaking weather conditions, not only in Texas but globally. They are observed in terms of the severity in droughts, intensity of storms, wildfires, massive wildlife die-offs, breakdown of ecosystems, and spikes in environmental-related illnesses. I have some brochures to share with you today that reference these facts that can easily be verified on the internet. Yet in spite of a global movement involving scientists, doctors, and professionals from various fields working to address this topic, there is no mainstream media attention and no discussion anywhere. I have to ask why. Why is that? Recently, my focus has been drawn to the multi-billion-dollar NextRad radar programs that are popping up over the globe. 13 of them are here located in Texas, and here they are known as Corsicana radar. They are described as next-generation radar systems for early detection of adverse weather systems. Each one emits varying electromagnetic frequencies that reach hundreds of miles. I've seen dozens of satellite loops and images on the internet showing these weather anomalies being caused by these systems. In consort with the stratospheric aerosol spraying programs, these systems are breaking up normal weather patterns and in some cases intensifying and redirecting weather systems. My questions are today, how are these weather modification programs being regulated? How do they address the anomalies in the weather surrounding these radar towers that are being observed and documented? Given that they operate on various frequencies depending on the weather circumstances, what is the highest frequency used? And how safe is it for the public and the environment? Are these radar systems being tested? Incidentally, yesterday, I was anticipating a storm. The weatherman said we were going to be having some rain earlier this week. In the morning, there were nice big puffy clouds. I went and looked at the Corsicana radar system, and the anomaly I saw was streaks, very parallel lines in these patterns, and they were moving from a southwest, northeast direction. Later on in the afternoon, those clouds had broken up, dispersed, and now they were in long lines forming across the sky, moving in the same direction, and apparently no rain came. Later on in the evening, I witnessed some chemtrails going across the sky, dispersing, creating this white haze that we see is now our current skies. And there's just a lot of weather modification programs that go on in our environment. It's going on globally. And I found out about this program, and I understand that maybe it's used for agricultural purposes, but there's other programs going on that the public is not being made aware of. And like I say, there's programs going on around the world, and this is being addressed by groups around the world. I'd like to pass out these brochures so that you can see some of the references that I've used and see if some of my questions could be answered and maybe be part of on the future agenda, could be discussed. That's all I have.
Okay. You're most welcome to distribute those, and said we're constrained by law not to discuss the items you brought up today, and you might visit with staff up here too, and they might answer some of your questions
Okay.
at some point.
Great.
While you bring this up here, I'm going to get you to finish your address on here just a little bit for us, if you don't mind.
Okay.
But thank you very much for your comments.
I'd like to add my thanks to your time. I appreciate your interest in the program, and hope that you'll be satisfied with the answers that we give.
Okay. Brings us now to, to item E, which is staff reports and briefing from staff and discussions from the executive office.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members, I'm Bill Kuntz, the Executive Director. The legislative session was a very interesting one for TDLR. We were very busy with the number of programs that the legislature was considering transferring to us. We currently have 24 programs under management. On September the 1st, we have 7 programs coming to us from the Department of State Health Services. They are to be transferred during the 2017-2018 biennium. Additionally, we have programs from the Department of Public Safety, which is parent-taught driver education, and from the Texas Education Agency, which is the driver education there. Both of those programs are being consolidated in one and transferred to TDLR. That program will transfer on September the 1st. We've already hired several of the people that have been in those programs at DPS and TEA to staff key positions that we have. We have been working on the rules to bring them into the same format that the TDLR rules are, and we'll be starting that program right away on September the 1st. We are in discussions with the Department of Health Services on the transfer of the other programs. Because it's so massive to have 7 programs transferred, and because the Department of State Health Services, as part of Health and Human Services, is a larger organization than us, things move a little bit slower than the flexibility that TDLR has right now with the size of our agency. So it's going to take some time to work out the details on that transfer. But that's keeping our staff very busy right now. Unfortunately, the discussions of the weather modification grant did not come to final fruition during the session, but it did elevate the discussions, and I think that with the water issues in Texas, I think that that's a discussion that will probably be had during this next legislative session, and possibly during the interim with interim studies, because we've been requested by the Speaker of the House to make suggestions of things that need to be studied during the interim. So we'll be having those discussions shortly. And that's pretty much where we are as the agency right now. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Bill. Any questions? Pat?
Quite a growth.
Yeah, it's always interesting at TDLR. Because you have so many diverse programs, there's always something going on to catch your interest and problems to solve, but it makes it fun to come to work.
I'm sure that. Anybody else? No. Thank you very much. Anything on Office of Innovation, or did we already kind of cover that, Bill?
Oh, Mr. Chairman, one other thing.
Yes, sir.
The staff at TDLR want to congratulate you on your judgeship.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
It was a great pleasure to see your name in the news.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. Very kind. And that brings us to item F, Field Meteorologist Report on Ongoing Weather Modification Activities 2015. Mr. Beaumont. And are we still, maybe might be covering E2 also, George, or? Yes. Okay, good.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm George Bomar, Weather Modification Program Specialist for TDLR. There were a couple of other items under Office of Innovation that I wanted to cover with you this morning before we get to the reports from field meteorologists, as well as a couple of action items that are on the agenda. At the last committee meeting in the spring, the Texas Weather Modification Association informed you of an initiative that was being advanced through the legislature to make some general revenue money available in the new biennium to allow a number of the rain enhancement projects that are run by water conservation districts in Texas to upgrade their equipment, principally to look at refurbishment and replacement of some aircraft. And as Mr. Coons reported a moment ago, that money didn't materialize when the session concluded, and so the projects are going to continue operating with the equipment that is in place, with the hope that some upgrades might be possible in the not too distant future. As a result of some extremely heavy rains in the spring, a couple of the rain enhancement projects terminated operations in the month of May. Those were the two that are the newest rain enhancement projects in Texas. One conducted by the city of Wichita Falls. The contractor for that project is the SOAR program that's been based in Plains, Texas. The city of Wichita Falls gets its fresh water from 3 reservoirs that are south of the Red River in the Rolling Plains area of Texas, Lakes Arrowhead, Kickapoo, and Kemp. And before the cloud seeding season started, and this is the second year that the city of Wichita Falls has had a permit from TDLR to do cloud seeding, and this was the second year that SOAR would be conducting cloud seeding operations for the city of Wichita Falls. Those 3 reservoirs were between 19 and 28% of capacity in woeful condition. And as a result of heavy rains that began in late April, continued in May and into early June, both Arrowhead and Kickapoo completely filled up. Those are the 2 primary sources of water for the city of Wichita Falls. Some water is drawn from Kemp. Kemp did not fill up, but it's currently at 75% of capacity. And as a result of extremely heavy rains in May, including the 17 inches observed at Wichita Falls, which made it the wettest month in the city's history, the city shut down cloud seeding operations in late May and has not resumed those operations since. And it's no doubt a reflection of the fact that today Arrowhead and Kickapoo are 96% full or greater, and Kemp remains about 3/4 full. As a result of the suspension of operations, the city of Wichita Falls did not request a license renewal for fiscal year 16, which begins on September 1. More about that when we get down to the action item, where we do have license renewal applications in for the other projects. It was an extraordinary spring in north central Texas. There were thunderstorms in the target areas of the Wichita Falls project, and those target areas were the watersheds of Kickapoo, Arrowhead, and Kemp. There were thunderstorms in those targets on every other day during the months of April and May. There was some seeding done, but obviously most or the bulk of the rainwater that fell in those watersheds happened naturally. And once we get an assessment from Texas Tech University on that project, I think we'll be able to pinpoint more what kind of contribution the seeding made to the heavy rain. But suffice it to say, once the surface got soaked and runoff exceeded expectations into those reservoirs, the city made the decision to pull the plug on the program. And I don't have any indication that the city will resume our operations in 2016, though that remains to be determined. They obviously don't plan to resume any operations before the onset of autumn of this year. The other project that's suspended because of extremely heavy rains was the Rolling Plains project, which is based in Stamford. It's east of Abilene. It's a smaller target than the one that the city of Wichita Falls maintain. Those folks also suspended in May. Their contractor is the SOAR program. However, the main reservoir that's near the target, Hubbard Creek Reservoir, today is only 35% of capacity. Before seeding started in the spring, it was down to 13.3% of capacity at its lowest point in history. And by virtue of the fact that the ground dried up in late June and early July, that project resumed seeding operations on the 31st of July. So we've had one set of targets go away, future uncertain. The other target east of Abilene suspended for a time but has resumed. The other projects that are based in near Pampa, San Angelo, and in Pleasanton continue to operate today. And as we know, two of those projects operate on a year-round basis, and one of them is designed to address the hail issue as well as to increase rainfall. The other item that I wanted to inform you about is a new publication by the American Society of Civil Engineers. It's entitled Guidelines for Operational Hail Suppression Programs. Because this is copyrighted, I didn't replicate the entire report, but merely the title page as well as the table of contents so that you could get some idea as to the coverage that this particular set of guidelines gives to hail suppression technology. ASCE every 5 years will update its guideline documents. We've worked in the past on guidelines for operational hail suppression, for precipitation augmentation, which would include rain enhancement, and there's also a document containing guidelines for fog dispersion. The hail suppression document was just updated within the last 12 months. We're working now on an update of the rain enhancement or precipitation augmentation document. And I would just cite a few things about this new publication. It's designed for anyone, whether he be an engineer or not, who might have an interest in designing and putting in place a hail suppression program, to be able to put his hands on a document that would guide him through the steps that would be needed. For instance, this document identifies the hail problem that we continue to wrestle with, not only here in the United States, but for that matter, all around the world. Contains a table showing the 11 worst incidents of hail worldwide. 3 of the 11 happen to have occurred in the state of Texas, and 1 right here in Austin. The other 2 in Dallas and in San Marcos. The most notable being the hail event of May 1995 at the DFW airport. It caused $1.1 billion in damage to commercial airliners. The guidelines addresses the various hail concepts, how hail forms. There is something about modeling of hail events, and there is an extensive treatment of the design of hail suppression operations, as well as how you would conduct them once you have your infrastructure in place. And very importantly, there's a section dealing with the evaluation of hail suppression efforts and the various tools that exist, as well as databases that continue to grow to enable us to make some sense out of cloud seeding for suppressing hail. The West Texas Weather Modification Association, based in San Angelo, has a dual-purpose weather modification permit for rain enhancement as well as hail suppression. They do some hail suppression during the course of the spring, summer, and early autumn. And as you know, each year when Texas Tech does an assessment of the various cloud seeding activities, there is a component of that evaluation that addresses the impact that seeding has had upon hail. And suffice it to say, the folks that run that program out of San Angelo are pleased that they have the capability of working mature thunderstorms, even violent thunderstorms, in order to lessen the incidence of large damaging hail. It's a very useful document. It's something that can be purchased, and I find it to be in wide distribution, not only in this country but in other places in the world where hail is increasingly becoming a problem.
Is it on the internet, George?
The document itself is not. It must be purchased, and it can be bought through ASCE at their website.
And in looking through the contents, obviously they just discussed cloud seeding. They didn't go into any of the other more controversial means of hail suppression.
No mention of hail cannon technology. You're correct. And that's all I have under the Office of Innovation.
Okay. Any other questions for Bomar? Then that brings us to item F, the field meteorologist report.
Yes, again, George Bomar with the weather modification program here at TDLR. Jonathan Jennings asked me to relate to you he was not able to come today for two reasons. One is he's having cover for Todd Flanagan, who's the meteorologist at the Pleasanton site. Todd had to go home to Canada for a family emergency. And Craig Funke, who normally is here and reports on activities that are going on in West and South Texas, is actually operating a seeding aircraft today for the South Texas project. With the movement of a frontal system here in the middle of August through central Texas today, there is quite a bit of convective cloud development, and both those projects expect to be in operation very soon, and that's why they're not here today. There is something, though, that I wanted to report on under item F, and it concerns the Trans-Pecos Weather Modification Association, the project that is based in Pecos. The Trans-Pecos group holds two permits from TDLR, one covering the original 5-county target area along the New Mexico-Texas border. That permit expires in October of 2017. There is a separate permit that TDLR issued the association. It expires in March of 2018. There have been no cloud seeding operations conducted so far this year in either of those two target areas, and I'm told the reason is they have not been able to find a capable pilot to operate the aircraft that's based in Pecos. And I mention that because our rules state that if someone holds a permit for longer than 1 year, and in this case, Trans-Pecos Weather Modification Association holds two permits, both of which are 4-year permits. And again, one expires in October of 2017, the other expires in March of 2018. Our rules state that if a permit is for more than 1 year, it shall remain valid for so long as the permittee continues to operate in successive years during all or some of the months authorized. And in all my years of working in this program, I don't know that we've ever had a situation before where someone held a permit for a 4-year period, operated in the initial year, did not operate in the following year for whatever reason, and then chooses to operate again in the third year of the permit. One reason for not operating in a year covered by the permit might be extreme wetness, like we experienced up in the north central Texas area this past spring. Because reservoirs are full, the flood situation continues to be a threat. Some folks might not choose to do cloud seeding in a given year. And if they're holding a multi-year permit, what would they need to do in order to meet the requirement that the permittee continues to operate in successive years? And I certainly don't bring this up to get an answer today. It's something that I've mulled over, and I'd like to suggest that perhaps at a future meeting of the committee that we try to give some clarity to our interpretation of what it means to continue to operate in successive years. Now, I can tell you that in 2015, while the Trans-Pecos group has not flown an aircraft and done actual cloud seeding, they have maintained in their employ a meteorologist, namely Jonathan Jennings out of San Angelo, who has analyzed for them cloud-based data and has collected and evaluated rain gauge data. He also helped them prepare for this cloud seeding season back in the early spring and assisted them in the search for a pilot. So there has been some level of involvement of personnel that have worked for that permittee before. They just haven't conducted a cloud seeding operation this year. And the question that has been posed to TDLR is, if we choose not to do any seeding in the remaining few weeks of this current cloud seeding season, would we have to apply for a new permit in 2016, which would require them to notice in newspapers, submit a new operations plan, and go through the routine of getting a new permit. So it's something that I want to suggest that we ponder and that perhaps we discuss at a future meeting, because 2016 will be here in a few months, and we'll need to have an answer. What constitutes a permittee holding a 4-year permit continuing to operate in successive years?
That's in the rules, not in the statute?
It is in the rules.
Okay. And do you recall when those rules were written, and it may have been before you were here, but was there a reason why the agency wanted to have successive years before, to?
I also believe it's a reflection of what's in the statute.
Okay. Need to look at that.
It's just we've never had to interpret before what it means, continue to operate.
It seems to me that if the meteorologist is on staff and is continuing to do his work, just the fact that an airplane hasn't left the ground doesn't mean that they have not continued operation. That's a possibility.
I feel like that they're operational. It just doesn't mean that they're not flying, but they're operational.
This is Brad Bowman. Since we don't have this issue specifically on the agenda today, I know it's an important issue we do need to talk about, but just for open meetings purposes, maybe we need to defer
Curtail
this
it,
to
okay.
another meeting, and probably the staff needs to visit about it a little more and kind of get our heads together on it. So apologize for
Fair enough.
intervening again on the open meetings issue, but just want to keep us on track there.
Okay. That works.
Let's just remember to put that on our agenda next meeting.
Next go around. Do that. All right. Well, then is that all you had, George?
That's all I had under that item.
Then it brings us to item G, consideration of possible recommendation on application for renewal of weather modification permit for the Panhandle Groundwater Conservation District. Our packets as well.
Yes, the Panhandle, George Bomar with the Weather Modification Program again. The Panhandle Groundwater Conservation District has maintained a rain enhancement permit since 2000. That district has renewed its permit on 3 separate occasions, and its current permit is due to expire in February of 2016. We therefore have before us an application completed by the district seeking renewal of that rain enhancement permit for another 4-year period. The district has not yet published its notice of intention, which it is required to do for 3 consecutive weeks in newspapers having general circulation in the target and operational areas. The district has furnished a draft of a notice. Staff has reviewed it and given them input. They have made the suggested changes. They have submitted a completed form for renewal of their permit. They paid the permit fee. They have provided a certificate of insurance as well as a very detailed operations plan. It's one of the more impressive operations plans that I've ever seen. So the only thing lingering is the publication of the notice and any public response, and whether or not TDLR would then take further measure to hold a public meeting in the area. I will say that this district, in renewing its permit in the past on 2 occasions, has evoked sufficient public comment that we have had to hold hearings in the area. One in 2004 in Panhandle and one in 2008 in Amarillo. And so there's the distinct possibility that there may be sufficient public comment that we would be holding another hearing before that permit would be issued.
Okay. Questions, Mr. Bowman? Not, I would entertain a motion to
I move, that we
Recommend.
recommend the approval for the permit for Panhandle groundwater.
Second.
We've got a motion to approve, or a motion to recommend renewal of the Panhandle Groundwater Conservation District permit. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, and a second?
Second?
All those in favor, please raise a hand. Record reflect the motion carried unanimously. Brings us now to item H, consideration possible recommendation renewal weather modification licenses for 2016.
George Bomar, Weather Modification Program Specialist again. We currently have 8 licensees in the state of Texas. We have before us applications for renewal of 7 of those licenses. The one license that is due to expire on August 31 is held by the city of Wichita Falls. And for reasons given earlier, they are not seeking at this time to renew their license. I would add that our rules state that if someone holds a permit, whether it's a 1-year or a multi-year permit, if the license, which is renewed on an annual basis, is not renewed, then that permit lapses. It becomes invalid. And so someone such as the city of Wichita Falls, currently a licensee as well as the holder of a permit that still has 2 years to run, by choosing not to renew its license for fiscal year 2016, then that permit will become invalid. And if they choose to resume cloud seeding operations in, say, 2016, then they would need to go through the process of getting a new permit, which would require noticing and so forth. And they understand that.
They're aware of that.
Of the 7 that have requested renewal of their licenses, in every instance, the person or persons currently listed on those licenses remains the same. None of the 7 is requesting that we consider and approve of any new individuals to be in control and in charge of cloud seeding operations, or to be in control and in charge of weather modification operations. One of these licensees does hail suppression using an anti-hail device. That's not cloud seeding, but it is weather modification. So I wanted to use the more generic weather modification operations rather than cloud seeding. But of the 7 licensees, the personnel remain the same, and we have received payment of the fee as well as the completed application form for these licensees. And those licenses that now exist are due to expire on August 31. These renewals would be issued prior to September 1.
Questions, Mr. Bowler? See if I get all these correct. So we've got West Texas Weather Modification Association, South Texas Weather Modification Association, Belding Farms, SOAR, S-O-A-R, Panhandle Groundwater Conservation District, Southwest Texas Rain Enhancement Association, and Trans-Pecos Weather Modification Association. Is that all set?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Purposes of all of that, anyone want to make a motion to recommend approval of the licenses?
I so move.
Or renewal of them?
And that-
Motion?
I'll second.
And a second. All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. Unanimously approved. That brings us to item I, recommendations for agenda items for the next meeting, other than the items we discussed tonight and, or today, rather. Do we have anything else that anyone up here wants to address? George, you have anything you want to talk to us about, or obviously we'll...
No, I went into some detail on that issue of operating in successive seasons, just sort of to lay a foundation for your consideration and discussion at a future meeting.
Thank you.
Okay. That brings us into item J, discussion of date, time, and location of next committee meeting. I assume we do that in Austin, so that brings us to the date and the time. Thursday still work best for
Yes, sir.
committee members? Okay.
That's fine.
And George, when do you think for our next quarter we need to meet?
I don't see that we would have any new action items other than in the event we held a public meeting or hearing in the Panhandle area as a result of their permit renewal request. That would happen sometime during the fall. If the committee met sometime right after the first of the year, it would be timely in terms of considering that permit renewal request. That permit expires in late February, so a committee meeting in late January or sometime in February would be timely.
I guess, Tamla, what available dates do you all have for late January, early Feb?
The last week of January looks open. The 28th would be Thursday, the prior Thursday would be the 21st. Both of those days are open.
No. Yeah, either one, I think, worked for me.
Maybe the 28th of January?
The 20, which one?
28th?
28th.
And obviously, if the staff has a reason that we might need to tweak that a bit, we'll be in contact.
Sure.
Obviously,
Yep.
but let's tentatively pencil that in for the 28th. All right. I guess there being nothing else before us today, and it is about 10:47, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Judge?